Hey everyone, I'm Majiin and welcome in to World Tour Weekly, your one-stop shop for all competitive Flesh and Blood news. This episode's coming to you a little bit late because Singapore's really far away and I got very sick on the way back. That being said, we do have a million things to talk about this episode, like the keynote, the actual Pro Tour, what the meta looks like now, and a special World Tour Weekly exclusive spoiler card from the upcoming Guardian Mastery Pack. Let's get into it. Alright, I want to start with the Singapore Pro Tour keynote speech. We got a sneak peek into more of the upcoming Super Slam set with cool cards like Full Art Overcrowded and Swing Big. Also revealed were some of the new tokens that were hinted at in some of the other spoiler cards, like the Toughness token, which destroys itself at the beginning of your opponent's turn, and then gives the next action card you defend with +1 block value for this chain link. Stacking up a couple of these could make it very hard for people to get through your defenses. We also now know that the Confidence token destroys itself at the beginning of your turn, and then gives the next attack action card you play. This cannot be defended by more than 2 non-block cards. This seems like it would function as a sort of pseudo overpower, but it would be a lot stronger against defense reactions specifically. It also seems like it can help force through larger, more powerful on-hits, like the new Standing Ovation, which if its condition has been met, lets you take an extra turn. Not bad for a blue block 3. Speaking of its condition, this card requires 3 or more Auras of Suspense to have left the arena this turn in order for its condition to be active. We have an example of what these look like thanks to the card in the palm of your hand. A red 2-cost Guardian Instant Aura that blocks 3. The card has the Suspense keyword, which means that it enters the arena with 2 Suspense counters on it. At the beginning of your turn, remove a Suspense counter. When it has 0, destroy it. When this card enters or leaves the arena, draw a card. Pleiades' hero ability lets you sort of juggle suspense counters, letting you possibly set them up to go off all at once, allowing for very large plays like Standing Ovation, which we talked about earlier. Also showcased is a new Reviled Brute attack action, Outside Interference. This blue 3-cost 6-power attack action card defends for 0, but it has a pretty cool ability to make up for it. It says, discard this. You may reveal a reviled attack action card from your inventory and then put it into your hand. I'm really interested to see how this card ends up factoring into the new KO. Getting to trade this in for any reviled attack action card could lead to a pretty cool toolbox type strategy. It allows you to put more niche but high impact cards in your sideboard because you can always grab them out when the time is right. Super Slam is also going to have a grand total of 31 expansion slot cards. This should give players of all classes something to look forward to, like maybe even Wizard players, as an example. The keynote wasn't entirely focused on Super Slam though. We got a sneak preview of the new cosplay contest promo, Frankie Make Ends Meet. Also showcased, but only for a split second at the very end, was something to do with Project Blue called Silver Age, coming out in 2026. I haven't personally gotten to try Project Blue yet, but I have heard a lot of good things from people who have. I also really enjoyed playing Commoner side events, so I'm optimistic about this format as well. Icelander is also on the teaser image, so that's a pretty good sign that I'll probably like it. There was a lot of other things covered in the keynote, so I recommend going back and giving the full thing a watch to make sure you don't miss any info. Alright, now that that's covered, let's move on to the tournaments in today's Weekend Winners. After 3 hard-fought days in Singapore, Shiroi Wu, a Singaporean, became our newest Pro Tour champion, piloting Gravy Bones to a first-place finish. If you haven't watched the event, I really recommend going back and checking out the stream. There's a ton of very good games that took place over the weekend. Case in point, the final of the Callings had 2 Pro Tour champions battling it out. Shoma Yamamura on Ira beat Michael Fang on Gravy Bones to become the Calling champion in a banger of a match. It was probably the best I've ever seen the card censor be in the entire time I've been playing Flesh and Blood. But that's not all. On Sunday, we also had the Living Legend Battle Hardened, which players are probably paying a little bit more attention to than they would before, now that we know it's going to be a major part of the World Championship in Philadelphia. Naive Mobasir won the event on Ira, meaning that 2 of the 3 events of the weekend were won by Ira. Absolutely not what I was expecting, but huge kudos to him for taking it down on a hero that most would have considered a little too weak for the Living Legend format. Congratulations again to all of our winners from the Pro Tour weekend. Now that we've seen who won and which hero they used, let's break it all down in today's Metagame Minute. All right, before the Pro Tour kicked off, I predicted that we would see a large surge in Slippy players, and that's exactly what we got, with 79 players bringing them to the Pro Tour. Gravy Bones and Syndra are more or less tied for second most represented, with 47 and 46 players respectively. After that, it's a pretty hard fall off, with Verdance, Dash.io, and Prism coming next in popularity. So we have all the day one stats, but I want to talk a little bit about how I think we got here. Anecdotally, I got the feeling that most players expected Gravy Bones to be the most popular deck at the tournament, and not by a small margin. He's incredibly strong, and the build showcased at the Pro Tour did a lot to streamline the deck and bring it closer to where I believe its full potential to be. It also seems like many players were very much on the fence about bringing him. Many were worried about the very rough Syndra matchup, and at the time, Slippy was seen as a lighter sort of counterpick. Slippy, on the other hand, offered a strong deck with pretty good perceived matchups into the rest of the top of the field. It's fun, certainly easier to pick up than Gravy Bones, and doesn't have any unwinnable matchups. I keep saying that Slippy has a perceived matchup into Gravy, and that's because I think at the higher levels of play, and with the more streamlined versions, Slippy is actually unfavored into Mr. Bones. This isn't the opinion that I had going into Singapore, but my mind was changed while we were doing the testing process. Gravy Bones is really hard to play optimally. He's also a board-based deck, and we have tons and tons of examples of board-based decks overcoming what should have been horrendous matchups. Just look at the recent matchup between Enigma and Aurora, for example. My point is that matchups that we expect to be bad for the Necromancer hero will likely trend more towards even or even favored the more time we give players with the hero. I think the Pro Tour is the first example that we have of this. He overcame multiple what we expected to be horrible matchups in order to be the highest converting hero of a large enough sample size into day 2, with 51% of players bringing him, making it to the next day of competition. Obviously, this stat isn't perfect considering draft plays a role in who makes it into day 2, but I think it's still a good jumping off point. Slippy also had a very high conversion rate of 44%, not quite as high as Dio's 50% or Arachne Marionette at 67%. Looking forward into the top 8 of the tournament, we see that Gravy Bones continued his dominance, taking up fully half of the bracket and putting 2 copies into the finals. We also saw some really cool tech out of the Gravy players, with things like Prismatic Leyline and Scuba making it into some of the top deck lists for the tournament. We also saw a breakout tournament for Ira in the Calling, which in my opinion is one of the best actual Gravy counters in the game. I wouldn't be too surprised to see her representation continue to rise, as it gives players a way to go toe-to-toe with the Necromancer hero. But I don't love where a lot of her other matchups are, so we'll have to see. My prediction for the meta post Pro Tour is that a lot of players are going to have to move away from decks that are too soft into Gravy Bones. They'll likely have to move into either Gravy Bones or a deck that has at least a pretty good matchup into him. I expect to see a drop in decks like Verdance, Guardian, and even Prism for that reason. Slippy will likely continue to be popular, but not quite as popular as they were for the Pro Tour. On the flip side, I think that Ninja's, Acilio, and Dio's representation will continue to rise as they offer you a decent spread into the rest of the field and a pretty solid Gravy Bones matchup. What do you all think? Is Gravy Bones as strong as I think he is? Let me know in the comments. Alright, I want to take a step back from the meta a little bit and talk about the actual event itself. Pro Tour Singapore was probably the best card game event I've ever been to, bar none. The keynote was fun, the venue was great, the games were amazing, and the beach party was just so much fun. It's going to be really hard for LSS to top this one. If you haven't been to a Tier 4 event and you have the opportunity to make it to one of the upcoming ones, I cannot recommend it enough, even if it's just to play the Calling or side events. They're so fun and you get to meet so many like-minded people, there's really nothing like it. You also get to see some crazy plays live, like this one for our Razor replay in the quarterfinals of Pro Tour Singapore. Okay, to set the stage, Edison is at 1 life with no armor left to block. He has Burn Bear in arsenal, Rampant Growth life in hand, and enough resources to pay for Storm Striders, Burn Bear, and Waning Moon. Nathaniel is at 9, so obviously the spell plus Waning Moon is lethal, right? Well, not quite. You probably immediately notice the Spell Void Dagger in play, raising the amount of damage that Edison needs by 1. Not a problem though, he's got the amp from Rampant Growth life. Except Nathaniel can actually use the Spell Void on the Burn Bear to prevent 1, buy it back with Syndra's ability, and use it again to prevent 1 on the Waning Moon, keeping him alive. Edison recognizes this and decides a very specific thing needs to happen in order for him to win the game. Let's see what happens.
I understand. Yes. Sorry, I block. I understand. Blocks. Go to.
Is going to go ahead and defend with that plow under, and now it's time for Storm Striders here from Edison.
He needs to
Nathaniel asking if there's a window to respond here. The current block represented by Edison would still have him knocked out of the Pro Tour with this attack to resolve.
Is going to let the Storm Striders resolve here. Here's Edison.
Heartbeat sends Burn Bear on in. Flick the Claw of Inserakai.
He's going to flick, and there's going to be the life gain. And Edison stays alive here.
And the other side of this rampant growth represents an amp effect for the waning moon. For lethal.
Right? If I didn't flick, I'll win. Yeah, you got it.
And it gets the fist bump. What just happened, Mitch?
Unbelievable, Edison, you.
What an absolutely insane turn of events there. I was losing my mind watching this live. In case you aren't sure exactly what happened, let's break it down. Edison cannot win this game if Nathaniel does nothing. So he blocks to put them in the reaction step, opening the window for Flick Knives to be used. The block isn't actually enough to stop an attack. The only point of the block is to make Flick Knives available to be used. He then activates Storm Striders and casts Burn Bear, trying really hard to incentivize some sort of reaction from Nathaniel. He gets it when Nathaniel responds with Flick Knives to close out the game. Except Edison has the rampant growth life to not only gain the 1 life and put him out of the Flick Knives range, but also to get the 1 amp to put him over the Spell Void and deal enough damage to win the game. To make this whole thing even more crazy, Edison told me before the game that he likes to bring in 1 copy of Rampant Growth Life into aggro to give him a little bit of extra push. To which I told him that I thought it was dumb, and bringing in a no block card where the text usually only says gain 1 life against an aggressive deck like Syndra cannot be the right decision. I could not believe that the 1-of card that I flamed him for bringing in was the pivotal piece that he needed to win the Pro Tour quarterfinals match. Okay, in the beginning of the video, I mentioned that we have a special Mastery Pack Guardian spoiler card, and I don't want to keep you waiting any longer. So without any further ado, here is Leyline of the Old Ones. A blue, 0-cost instant Guardian aura with some of the craziest art I've ever seen on a Flesh and Blood card. It reads, when this enters the arena, and whenever you deal damage, create a Seismic Surge token. At the beginning of your end phase, if you control no Seismic Surge tokens, destroy this. Some of the teasers for Mastery Pack Guardian seem to be kind of pushing the power level of the Seismic Surge centered strategies. This seems to be another piece of that puzzle. It's obviously quite strong, giving you a Seismic Surge when you play it, and threatening more every time you deal damage. It automatically stays around for 1 turn due to gaining a Seismic Surge when it enters the battlefield, and it incentivizes opponents to fully block out your attacks, something Guardian players would love to see. This power comes at a price though. It's flexible in whether you can play or pitch it since it is a blue, but it doesn't block at all, which is something that Guardians tend to do quite a bit of. I'm really excited to see what Guardian players cook up when the Mastery Pack releases in a little over a week, especially regarding Balda, which seems to be geared towards that Seismic Surge centered strategy I was talking about earlier. I hope you all enjoyed the spoiler as much as I enjoyed showing it off to you. That's about all I have for this episode, but before I go, I wanted to leave you all with a message from the Pro Tour Singapore Beach Party. Thank you for watching, I'm Majiin, and I'll see you next time on World Tour Weekly.
Welcome back to World Tour Weekly. We're here live from the Pro Tour Singapore Beach Party. This week, Gravy Bones won the Pro Tour. Wow!